You got to earn your liberation.
I mix what I like, what I like.
I mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. Get healthy.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Hey, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of Mix What I Like right here on BPM. Again, I'm Jared Ball, very happy to be your host. Come on in, make yourselves comfortable. Please do like, share, subscribe. Put this in your socials. Put this wherever folks would need to see it to know that you're here. Big shout out to those who are here live now and to those who will see and hear this later. Peace and welcome to you as well. So I heard through the grapevine that there was some appreciation for the track that you hear right now, which out there in the world. So before I get started today, I just wanted to shout out those who do appreciate this mix and to let you all know that you can't find it anywhere because this is an exclusive Jab Second Childhood production. And all it was the quick backstory was I wanted to put a track together in the hopes of bringing some go-go artists, salsa performers, and MCs together to create a black and brown anthem where the hook taken here from Mark Anthony's song, which he wrote after his breakup with J-Lo, letting her know I'm still gonna sing and dance and smile and live my life. I always had this fantasy of turning it into something, you know, some kind of rebellious version of this. So I had put this together to send to some folks to hopefully get their interest and then have it be improved upon. And it never went anywhere. So but I love it. So it's the Vibe Band, DC, the Vibe VYBE Vibe Band in a pocket groove that I looped, and then the hook from Mark Anthony's Vivir Mi Vida, Live My Life. So anyway, that's what that is. That's what that is. And shout out to all those who expressed some appreciation for that. But as great as that is, that's not the central topic for today. The central topic for today is this new documentary, Hip Hop in the White House, that Disney and Hulu have put out. That is just another monstrous, colossal assault on history, radical politics, a variety of things, but so I wanted to sort of add this to this. What I thought we were finished with it, with the 50th anniversary being last year, but apparently this is just going to be part of the persistent psychological warfare, counterinsurgency, abuse that we're going to be meant to deal with going forward. So So let's get into this, and then there's one other sort of separate piece that a couple people asked me to review, and shout out to my classes today. They got the preview of it. So okay, just going to go through some of my notes here. Again, it's not to. This is all Vernon philosophy warnings. Heads up. The idea again, whether however one self-identifies in the context that media are being produced, which is a context I'm going to get to in a moment, that is not considered in this series. We cannot be looking to find ourselves and see ourselves, and that would include documentaries that purport to be telling us our histories. So the very framing of this, and you see it. I have an element of it in the thumbnail here: hip hop in the White House. I do like the. I will give them credit in the graphic. I think it is fly to turn the White House into a boombox, but it's also abusive. It's semiotic abuse. It's the co-optation of symbol. It is exactly what if you were in the millennials are killing capitalism study group around the counterinsurgency manual, Department of Defense or Joint Chiefs of Staff or Department of Defense or the Army. I can't remember who put it out exactly, but that's one of the points that they make, the co-optation of symbol. So it's meant to be appealing to someone like me who would see that and be like, oh, that's fly, because it's meant to be, that's the immediate invitation into the co-optation. That's the Vernon philosophy invitation right there. And immediately what they do is begin to frame it as Ronald Reagan being the president of the hip hop generation, being framed in juxtaposition to Barack Obama, who hip hop is given credit for having brought into the White House. So of course it's meant to suggest that Obama is to be distinguished, juxtaposed against Ronald Reagan, as opposed to a evolved continuum, and is meant to suggest that hip hop had somehow matured and developed politically. So my first note here says, but starting with that frame, with Reagan allows for Obama to appear as an advance, and that is ultimately always a part of the problem in assessing Obama then and now. And then they are careful, of course, to avoid a more appropriate frame that would center settler colonialism, capitalism, white supremacy, imperialism, and allows for all the misinterpretations that follow. They open immediately with Jeezy and Jay-Z performing the remix at the after party of the after Obama's election in 2008. My president is black. And then the narration, which is Jeezy also, I believe, is saying that hip hop has been connected to presidents from the jump. And they tease with that little bit of foundational accuracy that their point is that the conditions that produce the communities out of which hip hop emerged are themselves the results of public policy coming out of the White House. But then again, that's meant to be said to have happened almost exclusively during Ronald Reagan, with there being an ever increasing or improving linear progression, with that hiccup of 8 years with George Bush, soon to be recaptured by 8 years of Obama. And then the way they carefully position Waka Flocka and others at the end of the series, or at the end of the documentary, were meant to, if not agree with, understand that the alternative to the failures of Biden and the Democratic Party is Trump and the Republicans. So nowhere do we get any leftward acknowledgement of any politics left of the Democratic Party, which is, again, sort of my fundamental, and I think many of our fundamental approaches to assessing a media product, or some sort of, or the politics of someone we may not have ever met before. It's that, and why I generally myself describe the left as beginning left of the Democratic Party. so that we can avoid all forms of liberalism as being considered part of left politics. But right here, we're very clear we're not getting any of that. It's because the same policies that produced the conditions out of which hip hop emerged, of course, are not shown or not explained to have also been implemented by the same party before Reagan and after Reagan, but also implemented by, of course, Obama, Biden, and Clinton, as well as George Bush, Senior and Junior. And as I'm going to come back to in a minute, this is why I'll come back to at the end of this, why FD Signifier in his new video about industry plants, Kid and Play and industry plants, is right in saying in a new way what some have been saying for quite a while, that everything produced after the commercial intervention, the corporate intervention in hip hop, everybody's an industry plant. So shout out to Davey D. He makes an appearance in this documentary, and shout out to our sort of ongoing disagreement over the historical narrative of hip hop. If you haven't seen or heard those various exchanges, I'll make sure a link is in the show description, or in fact, it already is as the hip hop catalog is already there. But Davey D brings in a discussion of why did I write Nixon? He made an allusion to Nixon, but then we quickly are brought back to Reagan. So I'm not sure what I meant there. But Davey D shows up, KRS shows up, and then we get Bakari Kitwana, one of the leading authors of my generation around leading hip hop studies scholar and author, writer for The Source for many years. And as I'll come back to a little bit of, because I went and found it because it just reemerged as relevant, our previous exchange for a book that I don't know that he ever ended up publishing or was changed, and whatever he invited me to comment on never appeared as far as I'm aware. But this was why the fundamental disagreement around the frame and the history, and then specifically as he gets to the definition of hip hop activism. But Kitwana is quoted here as saying it's always been political. That is, hip hop has always been political because of the context in which it was created. And that is absolutely true. So then they quickly through I think Kitwana and a few other, Farai Chidea is in there, and a few other notables and some folks I didn't recognize, but they go through some of the history of Reagan and just quickly, Reagan and Reaganomics. Again, Reagan died during my wedding almost 20 years ago. In fact, the 20th anniversary is June 5th of this year. About to celebrate our 20th anniversary. And raised a little glass. We get a reference to Gary Webb, and for those of a certain age, you'll remember Gary Webb's Dark Alliance became big in the hip hop community because Maxine Waters and others, Cynthia McKinney, and a number of others had started to popularize this connection between Iran-Contra, CIA, Nicaragua, crack cocaine in general, all flooding Black communities to help fund illegal wars sponsored by the CIA and getting arms deals with Iran. I mean, all this stuff is going on. And it's popularized at that time through a lot of discussions of hip hop, a lot of rap reference to it, et cetera, and so forth. Maxine Waters gets more run. She was involved in popularizing all of that. Again, not with an appropriate frame, often reduced to being used as a ploy to bring Black voters to the Democratic Party. But they make reference to that, and then they make the point that They even make reference to Eazy-E out of NWA as a political leader, they call him. And then they quickly transition to here comes Bill Clinton. Nothing about the Democratic Leadership Council or Committee, the DLC, nothing about the right wing of the Democratic Party evolving and developing Clinton as a particular response to the conservatism and the popularity of the conservatism of Ronald Reagan, and to a lesser extent, George Bush Sr., and a way to get the Democratic Party back into the White House with allusions, again, that pre-Obama brilliant allusion, and this comes up in this series, but incorrectly framed, to radical politics. He'll play the saxophone on Arsenio. He'll talk about smoking weed but not inhaling. He'll have, as was often said, multiple affairs and cheat on his wife, which is very black, and all those kinds of really stereotypical, silly things that are meant to falsely attach a black political consciousness to Clinton. And then as they make the point, LL Cool J plays at his inauguration. And it said here, quote, by Roxanne Shante, this was an incredible transition for us. We are literally, she says, in the White House. So even before Obama, the argument she's making is that LL's presence and Obama and Clinton's appreciation for LL is we're in the White House. Sister Souljah is mentioned. And then they show us the transition of that Clinton moment where he's able to dog whistle, not even dog whistle, but he's able to use Sister Souljah as a way of letting whites know he's not really as caught up in all this blackness and progressivism as he wants black people to think, and lets everyone know we're not going as militantly far left as Sister Souljah. And then they show us in this, in what should be framed better to have more of a appropriate political impact, but they show us the graphics of, and then you hear the narrator say, goodbye, Sister Souljah, who they picture with her fist up, and hello, Lil' Kim, who's pictured on the top of the source in a bikini top and something very revealing, making the point that this was part of the shift. Now, do they talk about the source and its impact on hip hop? Do they talk about its white elite Harvard origins? Do they talk about its 5 mic system? And because I watched the remix, I know that Tribe Called Quest Low End Theory was the first to get 5 mics from them. But that notwithstanding, they were able to have a lot to say over shaping the popular commercial version of what hip hop would become. That's not discussed in this, but they do use the source to depict the shift from the late 80s, early 90s and fists up in politics. And of course, they make all the use of the message and all this. They don't make reference to other It's Nation Time and other tracks that were more militant and politically radical and even predate the message, or were right contemporary with the message at least. But they do the standard. The message came out. It's politics. It's about poverty. And then they quickly show the shift in the 90s with Souljah going into Lil' Kim. And they make reference where one of the pundits is heard raising the question of, well, what do we get when we're in the White House? And they make reference in passing to an industry and radio shift that occurs in the 90s, but they don't really get into it. They don't get into the Telecommunications Act that Clinton signed in 96, consolidating, allowing for further media consolidation. They don't get into NAFTA and all else that Bill Clinton is presiding over that makes the black material condition and the working person material condition worse. They move quickly. They just sort of skip. And then what they really do, and this sort of leads into what I thought was very slickly done at this point, that once they show this shift in the 90s from Soulja to Lil' Kim and make passing reference to industry and radio impact on all of this, they leave out all of the 1990s just alone activism around so-called hip-hop activism around media consolidation, around cultural appropriation, around identity, black, brown, who is hip-hop. All these things were being raised and debated and rallied against and organized against and debated and hip-hop is being used by everyone, and this is part of my argument with Bakari Kitwana, hip-hop is being used by everyone from militant, radical, grassroots, nationalist activists to hip-hop Republicans. And my point was then, and it would still be now, hip-hop never clarified its nationhood and its ideology and its political organization. And anything could be called hip-hop activism and or hip-hop. And anyone could be considered hip-hop. I remember being at a conference and getting into some issue because when it was asked, should hip hop studies be a subfield of African or Africana studies? And I said, of course. It's like, to me, it was duh. It wasn't that simple to a lot of people. No, it's its own thing. Everyone contributed, this, that, and the third. I was like, okay. That was one of my early signs that, for me, that we're not on the same page and we're not clear. Even if I'm wrong, we're not all on the same page, and there's no clarity around what constitutes hip hop and its politics, its nationhood, et cetera, and so forth. So then immediately from this point in this documentary, they go right into the 2000s with Bakari Kitwana and Ras Baraka being sort of the primary spokespeople around what became hip hop's politics, because Ras Baraka was heavily involved. They don't mention this, but we know in Howard University's initial hip hop conference, and then obviously in his work in Newark, and at the time in 2004 where they talk about the hip hop political convention. His father Amiri was there. I was there for at least one day and was totally disturbed by it. But in this documentary, the 2004 National Hip Hop Political Convention was paraded as some sort of culminating, powerful reclamation of power by the hip hop generation, finally, after the symbolism of being invited to the White House under Clinton and being invited slowly, even being invited with the New York City Breakers to perform in front of Ronald Reagan because they were constantly trying to make this connection between hip hop and the White House and how it's evolved. And we're meant to see the 2004 convention in Newark as this momentous occurrence. Please check our interview with Rosa Clemente and Derica Blackman and I just went blank on the third person. Apologies. But go check that, where these are three women talking about all that went wrong primarily, but some right with that convention. None of that's discussed. They're not referenced. Nothing that happened there is really discussed, including watching Amiri Baraka tell us that we had to vote for and support John Kerry. And that was what was, for me, the most disturbing moment and proof that my argument and critique was correct. How can the culminating political call at this convention be support for John Kerry? So I wrote here, in this documentary, all hip hop activism is reduced to that electoral movement and convention, and nothing about the critique of that industry and radio, or all the struggles around that, or how all the people we criticized then are still playing same roles today. Lear Cohen at YouTube Music, DJ Envy at Apple or Spotify, one of them. I mean, it's like all the same gatekeepers, all the same silly promoters of commercialism and corporate and anti-blackness are all there. Then we get a whole bunch of because right around that time was Diddy hanging out with Hillary Clinton and doing the vote or die campaign, which Jeezy then uses to remind us of this is the evolution of his trap or die movement and his own political the evolution of his own politics. And we hear Kitwana saying hip hop and black people mobilizing for power is what was represented at that convention. It was, I couldn't disagree more. Then they bring Common on to talk about this moment. Not to talk about his track dedicated to Asada, not to talk about his work with the Malcolm X grassroots movement and trip to Cuba and South Africa, not to talk about his work around Black August politics, but to talk about how it was an amazing feeling, a feeling of true power to be in the White House with Obama. It was surreal. You wouldn't even know he did a song for Asada or that he had been involved with others around those politics. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know what it felt like to be in that Central Park performance in the summer of 2000, where everybody's rocking to his Asadas in the light, and all the and Pharaoh was there, and Mos and Talib were there, and it was almost a feeling like we might really be all right. That's how it felt that day on my way to Cuba. In fact, that summer. But now none of that happened. None of that is acknowledged in this or any of these other commemorative hip hop histories that we're meant that we're getting from Netflix and Hulu and all last year. All of that is not to have actually happened. But what Bakari Kitwana does want us to remember is, of course, Kanye saying Bush don't care about black people after Katrina, or someone throwing the shoe at George Bush and reminding us that George Bush said that during his presidency, the number one thing that disturbed him most was being called racist by Kanye. And I made a note here, as many others had noted, some of you I'm sure are noting in the chat, that it's absurd for it's absurd enough for Bush to have said the number one negative thing during his presidency was Kanye saying what he said, given, of course, starting with 9/11, the subsequent war in Iraq, and all the death never mind, people even forget, before 9/11, the whole world was talking about how the United States had elected a moron. The whole world was talking about how the United States looked ridiculous after not only electing a moron, but having that moron appointed by a Supreme Court, which I'm not going to talk about because that's how we got a strike on the channel last time with that, talking about that election. So I'm not saying anything about that election, but that's what the world was talking about until 9/11. But all he wants to remember is Kanye. So that's bad enough, but it's worse for Bakari Kitwana to come back and double down on that memory. In other words, to congratulate hip hop for having been Bush's number one thorn in his side. Not acknowledging the insanity of that, given 9/11, given Katrina, given, and And that all we've gotten out of that for all of this hip hop struggle and movement and inclusion is Kanye having to say he don't care about black people because he's leaving them to die in the water. And for anyone not remembering or not around for Katrina, that was a crazy, overt reminder of the colonization of African people in the United States. And for Kanye's statement, for whatever we did, to have that be held up as a powerful a powerful indication of, or an indication of hip hop's power, and not evidence of the impotency of hip hop, given that all it could do in that moment was have someone say he don't care about black people while they're flooded out and being shot trying to escape and cross the bridge. It was wild. And then they show that moment where Obama did the brush off your shoulder. And this is what I mentioned earlier, that all of that illusion, that all of us, again, for me, I always got to shout out Glenn Ford and Bruce Dixon as being first to tell me this dude's about to become famous. So get to know the name Obama and go back and read your Martin Kilson on the Trojan horse of electoral politics to get ready, they said. Because this Obama dude is you talk about, anyone wants to talk about grooming, that was the politically groomed counterinsurgency checkmate. And all that he did, and as soon as they put me on and I started paying attention, all Obama would do was allude to something black, allude to something progressive, never actually saying it, never actually committing, and anything he put his name on, he just backed away from over time. And then they mention in this documentary but they turn it into a positive. That's how slick this documentary is. They say when he did the brushing off the shoulder after Jeezy's on there saying, man, I did that song for him. He didn't invite me to the White House because they did a background check on me, and they wouldn't even let me in the room that he was going to be in. You can't even be in the building of the room that he's going to be in. They said that was all right because when I saw him brush off his shoulder as a subtle message, he didn't have to publicly embrace us. And my note here was that was my point. And this is read in the documentary entirely backwards. Instead of seeing this as a counterinsurgency, psychological warfare, propaganda, manipulation, it's seen as, we know he's got to do that. Wink, wink, nod, nod. And then when there's one person who raises the question in this documentary about what did we get? What policies did we get? It's just quickly left as though, almost as if to say, we know you didn't get anything, but we know that you will forget about that by the end of the documentary, as much as we've intended for you to forget about that in real life. Just get swept up in the overall symbolism. And then there's no reflection of what Obama did or did not do. So there's no discussion of what actual policies he did versus he didn't, or what did or did not. None of that is discussed. Yeah, Jeezy couldn't even be in the room, but he gets a nod from a distance via a shout out. So that was meant to placate. Then they get into the whole thing of how hip hop got involved with criminal justice, which is laughable. No discussion of the Rap and Tell program. No discussion of all of this even more recent use of lyrics to target and put jail sentences on people. No, it's a positive advance that hip hop is meant to be said to have had on the criminal justice system, even though it has to be acknowledged, and in some ways the documentary is forced to, that there were no demands and no policy. asking questions, are we on the inside and what is that supposed to mean? Kitwana has to acknowledge that Obama's on both sides of the fence, but sometimes he's with us and sometimes he uses us. And this is supposed to be acceptable and credited. The ad that was put together with Obama and Jay-Z representing the American dream and the ability for one or another artist to come back after Trump is elected to do a track called Fuck Donald Trump. And to me, I made the note, they're championing this as hip hop still has a voice. And I'm saying this is, again, more proof of the impotency of the previous politics, because how did we end up with a Trump? If hip hop is evolving itself and evolving its relationship politically with the White House, how did we end up with a Trump then? So again, you can't get credit for the politics that lead us to Trump, because as they try to point to in the documentary a little bit, one of the reasons we got Trump is because Obama and the Democrats didn't do anything or didn't do enough. But then instead of saying that means we should abandon all of this and go leftward, they use that to bring us back to, on the one hand, we'll have somebody do a track called Fuck Donald Trump, but on the other hand, it's also an evolution of our politics, because we can be critical of Obama, say fuck Donald Trump, but then work with him, because then we get a positive reference to Kanye being in the White House with Donald Trump defending Larry Hoover. They acknowledge giving Lil Wayne a pass for rocking with Donald Trump so he could get out of a gun charge. So I'm saying, so are we advancing politically as hip hop, as a community, or for few select artists to get entree, benefit here or there, a reduced gun charge or avoid a gun charge or whatever? And then they come to Waka Flocka, who in all of his black radical authenticity is able to remind us, hey, Obama's not from the hood. And to remind us that Black Lives Matter was nothing. And that's why he agreed with Trump, that Black Lives Matter was a symbol of hate. And again, this was the argument. Look, and I even found this is the argument I was having with Bakari Kitwana, or the debate or the discussion or whatever, the point I was trying to make. And I'll just quickly share that there's no political clarity. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this was the email, what I'm saying is that I don't think these forms are represented. I'm saying that radical forms of hip hop or politics are not represented in discussions of hip hop activism or organization. Somewhere in here, I end up saying that there's just a lot. It's just me saying it just leads us back to the Democratic Party. I think this was in my initial. I'm not going to put his up there, but although it's just an email. This was the first one I sent. This because there was a little bit of a back and forth, but that was the point. I was just saying, if hip hop is somehow a replacement identity, something with which I strongly disagree, then it too needs to have its own national ideological struggles and formation. Where is the nationalism in this nation? Where is the recognition of the colonial relationship this nation has to Western empire? Where is the resistance to tyranny in empire? How can hip hop work for Obama and U.S. empire? A truly liberated hip hop nation would remember its colonized status and the need to reignite its revolutionary nationalism in order to gain control over and defense of itself. And it would not reduce its struggle to voting for a Democrat or even voting at all. This is what anti-colonial struggles requires. This is what liberated communities strive for. And yet we have this thing called hip hop, a hip hop organizer, which seems to me a far more of a servant to neo-colonialism, a quieting, calming, firefighting purpose than a cultural expression. Hip hop was born out of anti-colonial roots. there to make noise and rile people up and ignite fires in their radical imaginations, if nowhere else. So anyway, that's what we were having that argument from jump, like where I was trying to make that point from jump. And then here we are right back in 2024 with Bakari Kitwana right back on the Hulu Disney big screen, and Waka Flocka sitting there saying Black Lives Matter is a symbol of hate, and that's why we need to vote for Trump. Exemplify, again, I don't agree with Black Lives Matter. And around here, we're with Daruba, BLM is Black Liberation Movement. But to say it's a symbol of hate and the reason why we should support Trump, and that's what I wrote here. Criticism of Obama is to allow room for Trump supporters, nothing leftward. Biden is a mess. We're shown that in the documentary. And then we're just basically encouraged to tap in through something Maxine Waters says primarily, to tap into the ultimate power of hip hop by getting more people to register to vote. But somewhere in those emails, I made that exact point, and this is the note I made here that with Bakari, that without clarity around its ideology, we even get hip hop Republicans. And there was a group, I don't know if they still exist, called the Hip Hop Republicans, and they were meant to argue that hip hop can be used to organize Republicans as well. So I mentioned earlier that F to Signifier just put out something called referring to Kid and Play. They were hip hop's original industry plants. It's actually it's a very interesting video. It's I think very well done. And for those of us of even that generation, it will remind you of some things. It reminded me of some things and even taught me some things I don't think I knew about their career. But I just want to bring up this one part to sort of put a bookend on what I've been saying about this Hulu documentary. That I think he gets that is FD gets largely correct.
This is another reason why I don't.
That and yeah, I just want to. So let me just play this clip real quick, and then
buy into the industry plant concept then and now. Today, when people say industry plant, they're insinuating that the art being presented is somehow more manufactured and commodified than the art that comes from less successful or visible artists, or artists that are more real and raw and less connected to the industry. And this isn't categorically false, but it presents a false dichotomy that hides the reality of what the music industry is then and now, which is that the entire system at the time and still today is an industry. Specifically at the time where Kid and Play was most active, there were no parts of the industry not controlled by corporate forces. Like if you pointed to, say, Public Enemy or NWA and said that was real hip hop, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Yes, they were better from an artistic standpoint, but those acts were still within the industry, still signed to record labels. There was still the same old white man in control of what hip hop was in the public eye. Like we had it in our head that there was a battle for the soul of hip hop in the future, and that Kid and Play's youth-friendly sanitized product represented corporate white influence for commercial appeal. And, you know, NWA and Rakim was raw and real hip hop, too raw for the radio and only here for the streets. But no, each genre was just viable in a unique way. And the corporations, the industry, were on both sides of the fence.
So that's I largely agree with that. I obviously would put it in slightly different language, but that's basically the point. And you get none of that in this documentary. So it's left with, again, a sense of autonomy and agency and a clarity of politics that just has never existed within what has ever been called hip hop. And the histories of how we got here are left out of these Disney histories. So yeah. So again, one more piece, one more sort of hit piece on the history of hip hop and its actual relationship and what it could actually reveal in terms of the actual relationship that Black people have to this country, its political economy, and so on and so forth. All right, very quick break. I want to come back, respond to this thing very quickly that I was asked to respond to, and then I'll check for any comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny, consternation, condemnation, etc., etc. So don't go anywhere. Quick break back here at I Mix What I Like in just a quick few seconds.
You got to earn your liberation.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay, so I was sent this by a couple of people, and it's a very short clip, won't take long, but let's just quickly have a look and listen.
And we're also going to have to undergo some serious modifications to our economic appetite. We're spending too much money on things we do not need, whereas the things we do need are being left undone. So, for example, as I travel the country, nowhere I've been yet, and I've been almost everywhere, there's no Black Wall Street operating for our people. And when I say Black Wall Street, I mean a Black-owned bank, Black-owned school, Black-owned supermarket, Black-owned hospital, and a Black-owned manufacturing and distribution network to give our people jobs and provide them with the basic commodities they need for everyday living. And we're also going to...
Of course, Dr. Umar Johnson. Okay. First of all, I don't want to do to him what I have lamented is being done to me quite a bit lately, admittedly, which for me is uncomfortable and new. I don't want to take a 44-second clip, okay, and go too far about what I think is being said or done here. However, in that 44 seconds, we get a lot of the popular mythology that I and others have been looking to combat for a long time. So I don't know I don't know his full current argument or conclusions, so I don't know to what extent this 44 seconds fits into how it fits in to his broader conclusions, but I will say taken by themselves, or that 44 seconds by itself, reflects a lot of problems. Sort of going back to what I was saying about the hip hop documentary, if it worth anything, if the discussion I had with Dr. Kemet Shockley recently, and going back a couple decades now, if Black people, or really anyone else, if Black people or anyone else are successful in removing themselves or fundamentally altering their relationship to this current societal, organizational, institutional structures, to this political economy, to this colonial setting, there will have to be violent conflict. There will be a violent response by this society. There is no situation in which all Black people, or a significant percentage of the Black population, removes itself from its current relationship to the political economy to create these autonomous, Black-owned, Black functioning institutions without there being massive backlash. So I don't know to what extent Dr. Johnson incorporates that concern into his, but it's something that I find is often ignored. There's this assumption, there seems to be a prevailing assumption among many, too many, that has been encouraged by design for a long time, that if we just behave differently in and of itself, we can avoid all other forms of political struggle. We won't have to engage electoral politics that much, or we won't have to rely on it. We won't have to certainly involve ourselves in any form of uncomfortable grassroots militant struggle. We're not going to have to incur any of the wrath of the state. Or vigilantes, maybe, but beyond that, the economics don't work. So where does the land come from? Where does the initial investment come from? Where does the consumer base come from? What is expected to be possible based on the consumption capability of Black people? Where is the external investment? Where are the growth opportunities? Unless the goal is to create a defenseless commune where limited resources and limited resources of any kind are shared, there's very little that overly simplified, I get it, 44-second version of an answer can do. So if there's no political power, if there's no ability to defend, if there's no ridding oneself of this external empire lording over, it feels like at best we've created a Palestine here in the United States. So and then I need to conclude by saying and reminding again that encouragement, the inducement of Black capitalism, the encouragement that Black people involve themselves in any form of Black capitalism, entrepreneurialism, et cetera, is itself an acknowledged propagandistic psychological warfare tool by the ruling elite. They've acknowledged this in a variety of ways, as I and others have been pointing out. So again, maybe the best immediate, to my mind, summary is that the Decoy of Black Capitalism chapter in Marisa Baradaran's work. So you can either read that or check my video on it, do both, and then beyond that, you have to, then even that has to be put into that broader context of colonization, of psychological warfare, of Dr. Burton's book, of all of that. So it just leaves out that approach leaves out so much, including how an explanation of how the economy works and Black people's relationship to it. So, all right, one more quick break, and I'll come back and let's chop it up if you want. Otherwise, we could call it a day. Quick 60 minutes. Back in the second.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Yeah, I don't think I think I said 60 seconds. I think I meant 60 minutes. So anyway, but yes, are there any comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, calumny, consternation, condemnation, contemplation? If we can get equal representation, then capitalism isn't racist anymore. Yeah. Or even just capitalism isn't capitalism anymore. I mean, I think it's a funny joke, but so I tried this one out today in my class, by the way. So I think it's a funny joke when I say that the most popular the most popular and famous critique in the world of capitalism comes from a white man writing even largely about white men in all white Europe. And even then, it don't work. Before he even looked up at the colonization and enslavement and cultural this is and that, he was like, it don't work. But I tried this one out today in my classes. When we were talking about, again, the persistent debate between African-centered, Afrocentric, cultural nationalism and socialism, I said, it's not that I don't appreciate traditional African cultures. In fact, quite the opposite. I appreciate them to a great extent. But I was saying we are currently locked in a post-European rise, a post-enslavement to the extent where anything is that, but just chronologically, not that we've after, but post-imperial, post-capitalist construct. So what we need are the tools for that particular construct. And that's where I find value in Marxist criticism. So it may very well be that the manual I have in my hand is older and predates the more current one, but the older one will only tell me how to pick the lock of a previously existing lock. In other words, traditional approaches had answers to the specific conditions that existed then. We're now in a different cage, and that manual isn't going to have all of the lock-picking solutions necessary. We're going to need to combine it with an updated manual that's specific to this lock to get us out of this cell created by this particular architect. And that's how I see the value of a Marxist analysis brought into Black radical traditional traditions. And at least one student who I never get a reaction from was like, gave me a little one of these. And I took that as an enormous victory, given the level of the stoic nature of this person. But anyway, that was, okay, cool. That's what I was trying to get to. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. All right. Right on. Manual 2.0. So that was at least my attempt today, constantly trying to circular. It's a pointless debate. I know, but I feel you, Ricky, but as it even Wednesday of last week, I think is when it was exactly said in this way. But even again, it's students bringing that same, it's white stuff though, that Marxism is white. And Umar and them do versions of that too. And so and that's who's, whew. So that was the one I was working with today. But I hear you. Yeah, that was a victory. I took that one today. We only got 2 weeks left. We're like 14 weeks in. And all semester, I'm giving all my best work. And then going through all the material. And all semester just blank. And then today, and I was like, I'll take it. Don't say nothing else. Don't ruin it. I'm walking out with that victory. Class ended early. Let's wrap it up now. Musa, what's up? It's not revolutionary for hip hop culture that Ben Shapiro had a rap song on the chart. That's, oh my God. I forgot about that. You're right. That's checkmate. Oh, man. I never heard it. I didn't hear it, but I am aware that that happened. That's just. Oh, wow. I watched this man praise Claudia Jones and condemn communism as white in the exact same event. Yeah, that's, yeah. I mean, yeah. And that's what I'm saying, Ricky. And this man, he stays being brought into my classes. I know it's not serious, but I feel compelled. I mean, I can't avoid I just can't avoid it. I can't avoid him constantly being asked, and in having him by proxy be argued against me in class by students who aren't doing as well with his argument as he would. But it happens. It still happens. So. But okay, I did suffer through that. I saw that documentary pop up. I watched it. I said, my Lord, this is getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And here we go again. Hip hop gave us Barack, and this was all a good thing. And even if you think Trump is worse, he really might not be. To the classes, to the students, yeah, if you want to do it this semester real quick before we wrap up, you can come through Monday if you want. 9 to 12, 9 a.m. to 12. Okay. 9 a.m. I got 3 back-to-back 50-minute courses. And you're more than welcome. Come on through. The Black Studies courses are they start at 10 and 11. But if you want, you could also come through for the 9 a.m., which is Sociology of Mass Comm. It's a variation of the same thing. So, but yeah. Just hit me up and I'll give you, or remind me, and I'll send you the details for the location and all of that. But that'd be cool. Yeah. All right, good people. I'm gonna head on out then. I appreciate you coming through. Please do like, share, subscribe, do all the good things, and duck and cover from the next Disney rendition of our various and collective histories. But other than that, peace, only if you're willing to fight for it, as Fred Hampton used to say. Thanks again, everybody, and I'll catch you next time here on
I mix what I like, what I like.
I mix what I like is exactly where you want and need to be. I mix what I like, organic, vegan, soul food from your immediate diet. That's healthy.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what
You got to earn your liberation.